How y'all doing, everybody? You know what time it is? It is time for Elevated Vibes right here on IntellectualRadio.com. Now, hey, part of the team is back, y'all. Part of the team is back. It is the boss man, Mike B.
What up? I missed you while I was gone. I mean, I tried to bring back some of that warm
I was
weather.
about to say, brother, you was basking in the sun, baby.
I was working in the sun, but it was a lot warmer where I was at. So I needed to hurry up and warm up here. But it's good to be back in the studio. Mr. Vibe Hive, glad to be back. Glad to be elevated. Glad to raise consciousness one mind at a time, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am your boy, Abdul Rashid, and we have a very, very special guest, y'all. That's right, we do. And I'm going to tell y'all about them. Let's get into it. Now, check it out, y'all. As human beings, we have a number of things in common. One is a story to tell. Now, their stories can be put into two sections. A story that enhances the life of the storyteller, or a story that enhances the life of the listener and the storyteller. The storytellers who tell their stories to help everyone, if you truly, truly look at it, are godsend, for that they are spreading knowledge on something that can bring a better life for all of the world in general. Now, ladies and gentlemen, sitting right here, right next to me.
In the studio.
Well.
In the studio live, coming to you live in front of a studio audience.
I said 1, 2, 1, 2. Anyhow, I have one of those God-sent storytellers with his book and now documentary. This brother is bringing awareness to a major flaw in the Cook County healthcare system and is pushing for true change. I am proud to introduce to you author, activist, actor, Mr. Julian Rucker.
Wow. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for taking a moment to bless us with your time. Rich, with his fabulous introduction, we no, and I'm serious. Like, people who they're storytellers and then they're prophets. And prophets are the ones who come and, have been afflicted by something and have a story to tell and hope to change the dynamics by influencing those around them. And I know we're going to get into it. And I know your story centers around the Cook County, but I think your story is a broader story about people of color and the treatment within the medical system. And I saw, Rich was kind enough to send me the clip and talk about your story, but I don't want to jump ahead, of that, because I'm putting the cart before the horse, and we eager to get to the market. Eager to get to the market.
Eager to get to the market.
And so for our listeners, please listen in and give us, after you hear this brother's story, call us in the studio, 708-223-8953. This is a story that impacts us all, and if it hasn't, it will.
Right.
Because we all get sick. We all get sick, or we know somebody who is sick, or we know somebody who gonna be sick. So
it's gonna happen to everybody.
It's gonna happen to everybody. And as we get more into your story, I can tell you about my advocacy with what I had to do, and things like that. So tell us your story. Like tell us, how did you come to the story? What is the story, and tell us how you came to it.
Okay. I was diagnosed for lung cancer at a public hospital and was told surgery was life or death. Once on the operating table, it was discovered not only did I not have cancer, but I lost my left lung during the surgery. I didn't find this out until about 30, 60 days later about the true aspect of what had happened, until I started going to the University of Chicago hospital. They pulled me in a conference room and they had to do their disclosure. What they did was basically told me, in essence, I never had cancer at all. The problems that I was having breathing-wise was because the phrenic nerve, that's the nerve that sends the impulse to your lungs, was severed during the surgery. And the proof was it was in the pathology slides. So at that point, I was angry. I was frustrated. I wanted to take legal action. I just wanted revenge. I wanted them to be held responsible for what they did.
Well, let's talk about that before you get into that. Tell us about that diagnosis. What happened? I mean, because that's a very poignant. And for those of you who don't know, and we'll have to our radio and our Facebook page the clip. And so
it's already on there.
It's already on there. See, so brother's already on it. So if you're listening to us, go onto our Facebook feed live, check out the clip, because that's a very poignant moment. Like you're sitting somewhere, you've gone in, you're having troubles with your breathing and all of that stuff, and just a general malaise is the best way to do it.
Exactly.
And tell us about that moment when the doctor at Stroger or Cook County, I'm sorry, which one was it at the time?
It was Stroger.
It was Stroger.
Okay,
it was Stroger at the time. Comes in and tell us about that moment. Like, can you tell us what that moment was like for you? Okay. Someone who has had to deal with family members who have lung cancer and what that means. And, so tell us about, and what year was this?
This happened in 2010.
2000. Okay. So tell us what happened. Tell us what was going on and what happened right at that moment, how you were feeling and why you went there and all of that stuff. Can you give us that background?
Okay, sure. What happened was I was actually admitted to the hospital because I had a on-the-job injury. I ended up going to ICU, and as I went in the ICU, they had me basically on steroids and all kind of antibiotics to eradicate, because I actually had a blood infection.
Okay.
How the cancer came into being was a month after that. I'm feeling great. My toxicity levels in my blood is diminished. I'm doing well. I get a call.
And you look healthy. I mean, you look like you take care of yourself, and
bro, you look like you could run a marathon.
Right, or at least boxing. Like you look like you go 12 rounds. So you got that boxer build.
Yeah, I wish, but I have my moments.
Okay.
All right.
And before this, you had no health issues, nothing?
None. No major health issues. Knee surgeries from being an athlete, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But shortly after that visit to the hospital, a month later, I get a call. It's the doctor from the ER. He says, looking at your CT scans, it appears you have cancer. When can you come in? And at first, I had that moment where, the room is spinning and you in disbelief. So I decided I'm going, of course. I go in and he's telling me based on a CT scan that I have cancer. Anyone who knows you cannot diagnose cancer off of a CT scan. So I didn't believe it at first until he sent me to a pulmonologist. A pulmonologist perform a bronchoscope, or endoscopy, those two procedures where they actually take tissue samples from the lung. So at that point, one of the tests said inconclusive. The other one said it said cancer, but it wasn't definitive. When I say it wasn't definitive, two different people looked at it and gave two different analyses. So they did a third one. It came up again. They did a third bronchoscope. At that point, they sent me to a thoracic surgeon telling me that it had metastasized because when they did another CT scan, it was around what's called the aortic arch area, around the heart area, which is a highly invasive area to do surgery. So at that point, I'm scared to death. I knew I had some issues. Yeah. I knew I had some issues prior to because I had a blood infection, but I didn't know that it would lead me down this road. So I opted to have the surgery. Once I had the surgery.
Well, let me ask you this. What did they tell you your options were? Like, did they give it to you? Like, did you feel like they were very forthcoming? Do you feel like they treated you as someone, a human? How did you feel about your overall treatment going into this?
I had some skepticism. There was one doctor that really was instrumental in everything. The other two doctors, when you got a lot of hands in the pot, if you will, you kind of get different analysis or
versions and everything.
diagnosis and that sort of thing, but from what I was told, it had metastasized around the aortic arch area from my lung. So at that point, I'm frightened and I opt to go into the surgery. And I was in surgery actually for over, according to the operative notes, I was in surgery for over 8 hours because they diagnosed they biopsied the same area 3 times once they found out there was no cancer. So at that point, they
Wait, explain that to us. Explain that to
Yeah.
us. So what do you mean? So you on the surgery table,
Yeah.
and they looking at the same area. Your chest is cracked open at this point, correct?
Exactly.
And explain that to our listeners. What do you mean they biopsied
They biopsied lymph nodes.
Okay.
The first lymph node that they biopsied showed no cancer.
Okay. And biopsy people, that means they took tissue samples. They literally, he's sitting on the surgery table. They're taking out small tissue samples and running it down to the lab and running this test to test for cancer cells. Okay.
All 3 of the samples that they pulled from my body, that's why I was in surgery for as long as I was, all showed no sign of cancer. At that point, I'm in the recovery room, my wife, my mother, trying to find out what's going on. My family's going crazy because this was only supposed to have been a 1.5-hour procedure, turned into a 6+ hour procedure. Couldn't get any information. So the surgeon comes back and says, quote, "We didn't find what we thought we were going to find." So at that point, my mom and my wife became angry because they weren't getting proper information. I was angry. Moving forward, I go home. The very next day, I try to step out of the bed, use the bathroom. I couldn't even catch my breath. I had what's called a collapsed lung on the right side, and I had a paralyzed lung on the left. So breathing, you can imagine, was extremely difficult. At that point, I wasn't satisfied with the doctors. So basically 60 days after the surgery, I get better health insurance. I get married, get better health insurance. I started going to the University of Chicago.
Now, and let's skip over that. Now, so what was the nature of your health care? I mean, you're bringing up a myriad of issues, a myriad. So what was your health care going into the surgery? Were you on public assistance?
I was on public assistance.
Okay. And you get married, but you get better insurance.
Right.
Okay.
I get private health care.
Through your employer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, they tell you they messed up. I mean, I could put it in other words, but they tell you they messed up.
Now, who was it Cook or University of Chicago?
This was Stroger.
Stroger told you they messed up.
Okay.
Well, they didn't admit it. They say we didn't find what we thought we were going to find,
Okay.
which was the reason I was on the operating table under the diagnosis of cancer.
In the first place.
Exactly.
Right. So now you find out about all this. All right. You go talk to, who did you talk to? Let me ask you that first.
From a legal standpoint, I talked to some of the top attorneys in Chicago, and they all basically shut the door in my face. It ranged from, oh, that's a complication of the surgery. And my argument was, if I never had the illness, shouldn't they be held responsible for my lung damage based on the diagnosis?
Right.
Ranged from that to attorneys saying that there's a statute in Illinois that allows public hospitals to misdiagnose patients, and basically we don't want to get involved. It's a big fight going up against the county. At that point, my options basically were limited. I got all my medical records from the University of Chicago, and I submitted them at a hearing.
Okay.
And I won the hearing, later retained an attorney based on the evidence that the University of Chicago did. And at that point, it became a 7.5 year legal fight.
All right. Now, with this legal fight and what they were using this, if I'm saying it correctly, help me. Tort Immunity Act.
Yes.
Okay. All right. How long has this been on the books within there?
I'm not exactly sure the length of time, but I've been told 50 plus years.
Okay, and the reason I'm leading to that because somebody should always look at the laws, and if they need to be changed, you need to change it. But now let me dip into this as well, because see what I found out as you and I were conversating, and me understanding your story. I looked deep into a few things, and the rationale, or in my book, the excuse that they would use. All right, it came from the National Library of Medicine, and it would go as follows. It would say, to prevent the diversion of public funds from their intended purpose to payment of damage claims, and allow public employees to exercise judgment without the fear that a mistake made in good faith might subject them to a lawsuit. Now, that's something real similar as they would say, as right now they're talking about back to blue and all that, and saying that, the police can't be policemen because they fear that lawsuit. So they're going under the same guy, same
playbook.
Excuse.
Same
I'm gonna put it as that. Now, on all that, and I know you've gotten that, and hopefully I'm not digging up no bad feelings. So,
I'm in a better place.
Okay, appreciate that. I feel better because I don't want to do that to nobody. Now, with this excuse, are your feelings? Yours.
Mhm.
A person who has been through this, because I do feel that you've been through it and it's been on there for 50 years. There's a lot of other folks that have been through it that has not had a chance to come out and talk about it. So what is your feelings on this excuse?
Well, let's explain it a little bit. The tort
Go ahead.
immunity is a law
Yeah.
that says that unless the conduct is willful and wanton, it's a
Mhm.
higher standard than just sheer negligence.
Mhm.
They have to prove that it was willful and wanton. And I'm abbreviating, but you have to prove like they gave absolutely no care.
Exactly.
And the idea is that this is a way to protect public assets, public funds. So when you think about tort immunity, you also think about police officers who are engaged in the conduct of their business and things like that. And unless another officer has acted in a similar way and been
Out of the
punished,
scope.
and under the scope of authority and all of that stuff. So. And I'm being real brief with it because we're not a legal show, but it's a protection that is afforded to people in their public capacities. Like you have to be a public officer that provides a tort protection or protects you from suit, unless they find that the conduct is willful and wanton, like with blatant disregard. It was
Exactly.
wild and outrageous, this conduct. And
Mhm.
so that was some of the issues that you had trying to find legal representation, is overcoming this standard.
Exactly. You were mentioning to me what I would like to see out of this.
But that I wanted to know your feelings upon that excuse first. Then I was going to go to what would you like to see. But go ahead.
My personal feelings are it's a racial statute. It's actually discriminates against people based on their economic status, because who goes to public hospitals with people who can't afford to go and have private health care? With that being said, as precious as healthcare is, especially in this day and age, we still have laws that allow this kind of behavior to go on.
And this was before the ACA, right? This was
Yeah.
before that. So
Yes.
this is, and it trips me out that people are still against the ACA. When you hear about these stories, and like you said, healthcare is a human right. It is
Right.
not a privilege. Healthcare, is a human right. It's not a privilege, and it's unfortunate in this country that we tie it to unemployment. You know, who
Economic
amongst us
status and
have
employment.
not been without a job, you know,
Yeah.
and found ourselves in between jobs and, you know, things like that. So
Yeah.
tell us, what was your feeling when you found out about this and as you're getting into it? And then I want to talk to about, you know, public health care and being an advocate for yourself and things like that. So
When I first found out about me not having cancer and the injury that I sustained during the surgery, it left a dark moment. And the more I thought about it, it fueled me to do something about it. I wanted these people to be held accountable. Looking further, that's when I found out about the statute. And I just talked about how my personal feelings are about the statute. It's really sad. Let me say this. And I did a speech in front of our commissioners just before the pandemic, that they know that this statute exists, and they do the blind eye and the deaf ear. They're not even willing to have a conversation about it. That's what's disheartening. And I'm sure if the residents of Cook County had knowledge that this statute exists, they'd be appalled, and they should hold their elected officials accountable.
So nobody at all from the General Assembly, Cook County officials, nobody even wanted to talk to you about it?
There were a few people who gave me their cards. I reached out to them, but, you know, after that, they were ghosts.
So let me ask you this: what did the hospital that performed the surgery, Cook County Stroger, do that caused you to injure? What was the exact injury that they did? I mean, I know it sounded like it was supposed to be exploratory / surgery to remove a cancer. They removed 3 samples from you, and what happened during that caused you? You had mentioned briefly what UFC told you had happened. So what happened?
Basically, it was done from, according to the operative notes, the first incision that was done was the actual incision that severed the phrenic nerve. The phrenic nerve is the nerve that sends the impulse to your lungs to function. Without that, you have a paralyzed lung. That's synonymous to, if I cut this cord off this
Your
microphone, the mic doesn't work. So that's my current status.
Okay. And what was your initial steps after you meeting with you? Like, was you in disbelief? Did you believe University of Chicago? Like, what was that transition like?
Well, the transition was pretty quick. The University of Chicago got my medical records within 15 days. Within another 15 days, they had the full diagnosis down pat. They told me everything from start to finish, what happened. They had the pathology slides. They had the operative notes. Everything was already there for them to make an accurate diagnosis, you know.
And they said, sorry that you.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was recovery like, or is there recovery, and how does that go?
There's about a 20 to 25% chance that phrenic nerve can regenerate and regrow. And I've talked to doctors at University of Wisconsin, and he was the one that said it. He said, but the difference is the age of the patient that's afflicted with it. A younger person will stand a better chance of those nerves reconnecting, as opposed to someone who was my age at the time. I was 44.
Okay.
So it was a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
All right. I know we've been talking about the dark end. All right. We've been on that. All right. But right after our quick musical break, we are going to talk about you coming out to the world, bringing the light, bringing the greatness that you have, you putting out there right now. Okay.
Triumph over tragedy.
Right. You know what I mean? So, everybody, right after the musical break, make sure you join the conversation. 708-223-8953. This is Elevated Vibes.
The falling leaves drift by my window. the autumn leaves of red and gold. I see your lips, summer kisses, and the sunburned hands that I used to hold. Since you went away, the days grow longer, and soon I'll hear a winter song. But I miss you most of all, my darling, when autumn leaves start to fall. Falling leaves drip by my window, the autumn leaves of red and gold. I see your lips of summer kisses and those sunburned hands that I used to hold. Since you went away, the days grow long, and soon I'll hear a winter song. But I miss you most of all, oh, my darling, when those autumn leaves, those autumn leaves, those autumn leaves, those autumn leaves begin to fall.
All right. We are back. This is Elevated Vibes on IntellectualRadio.com. We are speaking with Mr. Julian Rucker. Now, sir, like I said, we're gonna come on into the light. We're gonna walk out of the dark. We'll
All
come
right.
into the light here. All right. First, I gotta ask you, because like I said, you wrote a book. All right, and now you have a documentary out. What inspired you to say, I'm gonna write this? I'm about to do this.
Oh, that's the easiest one.
Come on
I was
with
either
it.
going to catch a case or I was going to write a book.
All right.
Because when I found out everything that had happened to me, it left me in a dark place. It left me in a place where I hope to God I never have to visit again. Writing actually became therapeutic for me. I put all my emotions, everything I went through on paper. And that was some of the best and therapeutic thing that I could have done.
Did you ever hear from the doctors? Like, did they ever say, apology, I'm sorry? You know, and I'm talking about, I mean, the ones who actually performed it. Like, did you ever
No.
for them?
No. One of the four, I guess you call them defendants. One of the four fled the country. We were not able to subpoena him for about 2 or 3 years. Another, he just basically continued to avoid everything. So to answer your question, no.
All right, let me ask you this real quick. The names of these folks, the one that fled the country and the one that's hiding, put them out in public, because I feel like this. Hey, you did wrong. People, find these people, and I ain't saying do nothing buck wild, but hey, call officials, whatever you got to do.
Well, I don't know if I can necessarily
Okay,
do
if
that.
if it's gonna get you on the legal thing, then don't do it.
But I will say that 2 of the 4 are still practicing.
Wow. Now that you know they
As
don't
far
need
as I
their
know.
license.
Yeah.
They don't need it. They don't need it.
Yeah.
All right. Now you did the book. Now you stepping up into film.
Well, we still ain't go from the from
I
the
still I'm
journey
trying
from
to,
the darkness
I'm
to
trying
the,
to I'm going
well,
to the light, but go
yeah.
ahead.
So tell us about this book. So tell us, you started writing. Was it just to convey your feelings, or were you trying to let other people know? Like, what started off as your purpose
My
for writing the book?
purpose for writing the book, actually, in the very beginning, was just putting all my feelings for that 8-year ordeal on paper.
8 years.
8 years.
Mm.
8-year litigation.
8 years of litigation. So it's like, has there been resolution to the litigation? Or are we still going on? How's that going?
Oh, we settled it.
Okay.
The case was settled. I won the case in 2019.
And then the pandemic.
Yeah.
Get hit
Pretty
with something
much.
else.
Pretty
Well,
much.
I mean, because of the nature of the pandemic, I know that was extremely disconcerting for you. So it's like you literally run from can to can't because you're dealing with lung issues. And now here we are dealing with a plague or a virus that affects the lung. So,
Yeah.
This literally, great celebration, and you literally have to hide yourself going in seclusion. And what people don't understand is that when these injuries happen, you look fine, you're great, you're walking here, but it's that that you are not at 100%. That's the nagging part. Like you're not where you should be because of not through any fault of your own. You relied on the judgment and wisdom of those who have gone to school for this knowledge, and you are injured. So, when we talk about verdicts in this country and, all of this other stuff, yes, there are a lot of frivolous lawsuits out there, but there are situations like yours where real people have real injuries and have suffered real consequences. And I just want to talk about that 8-year journey. How did you transform? And I guess that's what Rich is getting at. Talk about to us that transformation. How do you go from Darth Vader to Luke Skywalker?
That 8-year journey, I saw loved ones die, meaning my dad. I also saw 3 different judges hear my case, 2 different attorneys who represented me from the same law firm. And actually, one of them, I tried to have him off my case because of his racist views.
The lawyer?
Wow.
The lawyer who was representing me. He ended up leaving the law firm before the case was over, after I made such a fuss about some of his inflammatory racist comments.
How did you find out about these comments?
One of the things that happened, this particular individual was with this law firm. He was my attorney by default because the original attorney who started out with me left to become a partner at another law firm. So me and this guy, he was maybe close to my age. He just was not respectful of not only what I was going through, he didn't believe in the case. So I'm going to share some with you and let the chips fall where they may. This same attorney bought in another attorney. This other attorney was the head of the civil litigation department of the very of Cook County attorneys that I was suing. He was let go a year or so before that because of his racist remarks regarding potential black, some of our black leaders. So when I found this out, of course, I found this out much later during the case. I tried to, I didn't want this guy representing me because I felt he did not have my best interest and he had preconceived notions about people of color.
Now, you were saying that you had some trouble getting them off of your case.
Yeah.
Right. who put the blocks up that gave you this type of trouble getting them off? You know what I mean, because look, hey, I'm a guy that don't know much on when it comes to laws here and there until I start studying it. All right. Now, from what I've known, all right, you hired that lawyer. Once you say, hey, no, you got
Hired
to
the
go.
law firm. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
He's representative.
Right, but you could still don't you still have say and say, hey, this guy got to go? Why you guys are blocking me from keeping this? Why you keeping this guy next to me?
Well, what happened was we were in the final phase of the case. I've talked to some other attorneys who I would have loved to represent me, who I felt they could represent me. And basically, they said, you're too far in the case for us to come in.
Mhm.
Okay.
And that's pretty much what happened.
So did you end up going to settling? Did the case settle with the attorneys that you had a problem with, or did the firm assign new attorneys?
That particular attorney was relieved. Then they brought in a third attorney. So I had 3 attorneys at one time over an 8-year period.
Mm-hmm.
And he finished the case out, which was basically the last 4 months of litigation.
Okay. Wow. So all you had to go through that, bro, man. But I'm gonna switch this to the light, man. I'm switching it to the light, man, because I had to see it for a minute, like, man. But back to the inspiration for the film. What made you say, okay, I'm gonna put it on film now?
Well, I had a book signing, and the book signing did well. It was June 1st, actually, of 2019. I sold over 500 books within a 4-hour period between online sales and in-person sales. And
give us the name of the book, listeners.
The title of the book is Shattered But Not Broken, and it's by Jay Styles. Jay Styles is my pen name. That's JAYSTYLES.
And where can they purchase this book at?
It can be purchased on Amazon.
Okay. So Shattered But Not Broken by Jay Styles on Amazon.com.
Yes.
Okay. Make sure y'all go on Amazon right now.
Get with them.
Get with them.
Get with them. Without a doubt. But as for that inspiration, though, to the film.
That came out of the book sales. And a friend of mine came to me and said, man, you got to put this on. This got to be on film. People need to hear this story. This stuff is happening and, every day, and people are not cognizant of it. That was one of the motivating factors to put it out there.
All right. Now, bro, you went to Hollywood. You went to Hollywood, man.
Yeah.
Explain to everyone the reason for the pre-Oscar event that you went to and so forth.
Okay. It's a pre-Oscar gifting event. And it basically gives me a platform to share my story with other actors, producers who are in the industry. And it was quite powerful. I got a lot of love. I got a lot of feedback. I've gotten information with other producers who have an interest in possibly working with me down the line.
And who you want to play you in the coming film? Who you want to play you?
My godson say Drake, but we know. No. To be honest, I never really gave it a lot of thought because I've been pushing so hard to bring awareness and get the story out. But yeah.
Okay. Tell us about the transition from getting the book to film. What has that been like? What steps have you gone through? What hurdles have you had to overcome? I mean, you don't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to Hollywood. I mean, how tell us about that transition.
I reached out to a young lady in California named Monique LeRae. She's on WLAK Talk Radio, I believe. And she heard my story and she was just blown away. And she said, you got to come down here. You got to come down here. And we made it happen from there.
Okay. And where are we at now with transitioning from book to film? Where are we at in the process?
We've got a couple of prospective people that we love to work with, and they've shown some interest. So right now we're just in the infantry stages, putting everything together and see what can be done.
Okay.
So you thinking that, okay, once everything's out there, once everything's done, people could see the documentary, about a year and a half from now? Something on that timetable?
I would hope, but it also depends on who picks it up in the production.
Okay. All right.
Well, when you get the film made and you're doing the recap at the end, you should put a clip in coming on this show talking about, and me and Rich can play ourselves.
Okay.
This will be the final scene in that movie where you bring it all together. We gonna get Michael Ealy to play you.
Okay,
or Idris Elba. We're gonna get Idris Elba to play you, so
Well, you're gonna have to let a brother know in due time so I can do a lot of sit-ups. A whole bunch of them. I can't be on film like that, man.
let me ask you this. What lessons do you want people to take away from your story as you sit here today? And let me just, you've dealt with the incompetency of the medical system. You've dealt with the lack of access to justice with the health, the legal system. You've had to deal with racism and prejudice. You've dealt with a lot in these 8 or almost 10 years now of dealing with that. And as I said, the thing about it is we have to be our own medical advocates, and too oftentimes we rely on the knowledge. But what your story tells me is just because someone says something don't mean it's true. Like, you do have a right. And I think the tragedy of the story is like you said, you had to get a job and decent and private health care, medical care. And I think that's the real tragedy of this story. It's like all of this could have been prevented with just decent, available, competent medical services. But for that, you wouldn't be here right now. So what lessons would you like for people to learn?
Well, people always say get a second and third diagnosis or second or third opinion. I'm sorry. And that's exactly what I did. I got the initial diagnosis from an ER doctor. I went to a pulmonary doctor. He says the same thing. I went to a thoracic surgeon who actually did the surgery. So I did everything from a preventative standpoint to make an accurate diagnosis. Moving forward, I think, going back to the statute, and that's what I would really love to see our elected Cook County officials stand on and do something about it.
The Tort Immunity Act.
The Tort Immunity Act. It's a terrible statute. And like I say, I got my own personal remedies for it. If I could share them.
Sure.
Come on.
One of the things, I'll just talk about one of them. One of them is there would be a moratorium period. If I'm diagnosed for cancer, instead of one person taking it and running with it, there should be at least 3 doctors in that same related field from that same hospital to take all the necessary information and come up with a more accurate decision. And this moratorium period would be within a 15-day period max, depending on the severity or how far the cancer or the illness is, that sort of thing. But I think that would cut down on a lot of potential lawsuits, and more than anything else, it would save lives. All it is just, instead of 2 eyes, you got 6 eyes, and they coming together collectively to come up with an accurate diagnosis.
Now, let me ask you this. With what you're saying right there, have you brought any of this to the American Medical Association? Where that they may start pulling some of these changes, especially to hospitals like Cook County and so forth, which is where it's needed,
Actually, no, I haven't.
Okay.
But I will say, I talked to a gentleman. He bought my book. He actually was a doctor in Europe.
Mhm.
And he was explaining to me, how they are moving forward with changing the similar statute. And now it's to a point, it's all about saving lives. It's not a situation that's going to cost the county a whole bunch of money. But if you can save a life, that's what it's all about.
Right. I agree. And if I'm correct, yeah, it might not cost the county a whole lot of money, but they should get a federal stipend coming in for healthcare regardless, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it shouldn't be too much off of their back to do what you're suggesting. And just for, saying sake, okay, something what you suggest are at some of the bigger, more specialized hospitals already, where you have these different have these different teams on things. You and I have talked, and I told you about some of the situations with my son, and I take him to the Mayo Clinic, and they do that. This is what they do. Well, you get these different eyes. So why can't it be at Cook County, and we can start naming Ingalls and every other hospital I could think of?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think part of the issue too, and my own stories, my mother, had been diagnosed with lung cancer, and they were trying to send her home, but for and she was in the hospital, dealing with the cancer, but they were sending her home, and she wasn't able to really stay awake, and the doctor's like, whatever, and it just happened that one of her nurses, other doctors came in, not the main treating doctor, but the doctors who deal with cancer and
oncologists.
It was the doctor that kind of helps you with the non-medical stuff, like they take care of you like when you're getting ready to go in the hospital. So one of her hospice doctors, and was like, why he keep ordering x-rays? He was like, the x-rays ain't gonna show nothing. She needs an MRI, and it showed, and of course, when she orders the MRI, it comes back, well, one of the benign tumor that had been on my mom's pituitary gland was no longer benign, and it was impacting her ability. And it's one of those things where, when they told me what they were diagnosed with, and you're looking at all the symptoms, you're like, well, why didn't the doctor know this? Like, I Wikipedia'd it,
right?
And her K levels were high, her potassium level was high, she couldn't stay conscious, bright light was bothering her, and here's this doctor trying to discharge her home, and so the doctor, the neurosurgeon had to rush down and say, oh, we got to put her into emergency surgery. So I think part of it too is, as African Americans or people of color, is dealing with our healthcare system. This belief that, African Americans and Black and brown people deal with pain better, not listening to our symptoms, that we're magnifying it, we're doing it for the purposes of getting. So there is a racism bred into our healthcare system, and we think these doctors are above it, but they're actually not. It's kind of indoctrinated. So I say all of that to say is, like, you have to be your own advocate, or you have to take someone with you. Like, never try, if you're dealing with something, never go to the hospital by yourself. You need someone who can advocate for you, because sometimes it's hard to even advocate for yourself. But we, as Rich can explain, I have explained, when it's your family on the line, you become a more zealous advocate. Sometimes I hate to say this.
Yeah.
Sometimes you try to deal with them as the Negro, but sometimes they only understand the alternative personality. All right, and I'm trying to be, but everybody knows.
Keep it good. Read between the lines, everybody.
Keep it classy. So
you are absolutely right. I can't even count how many times these doctors, how long have you been smoking? I said I've never smoked a day in my life, and they thought I was lying.
Right.
Yeah.
Even up until I met the thoracic surgeon. He asked me, well, when did you stop smoking? I've never smoked a day in my life.
Lips ain't never touched a cigarette.
No. I don't even like the smell of smoke around me. So, they sometimes, I will say this, and I had to explain to one of the doctors, this is my body. I have it with me all the time. So if I tell you that I'm experiencing certain pains, you cannot negate what I'm saying and tell me, oh no, that's just in your head. And you just
Oh.
examine me,
Cursing.
So they don't take what we say as a sign to look somewhere else or something. They kind of write it off like they don't know what they're talking about. But this is the body that I have with me all my life. I think I should have a good idea. I know my body better than most people, I would say, from a physician. If I got arthritis in my knee, I know my knee feels funny. That's the first sign that I, feel. So when I go see the doctor, I shouldn't expect him to diminish what I'm saying to him as far as I think I got arthritis. My knee is hurting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna know your body, plain
Yeah.
and simple. I mean, that's anybody and everybody. All right. Now I'm gonna touch on something that you had spoke on, and you were saying on how a lot of the politicians just threw you by the wayside. It's coming up to election time. Has some of their opponents even talked about it or even reached out to you? Because maybe you can get some leeway there. I mean, maybe, the wrong person's in office and it's time for a change.
Yeah, I've had some third-party conversations of a person who knows a person that's running, and they got wind of the story, and they reached out to me on social media, and they've asked, well, how can we get this out to people? How can we really bring awareness to what has happened to you? And like you said, it's election time. I'm just really shocked that some of our elected officials who look like you and I, who've been sitting in office for over 25 years, once this is brought to their attention, you would think they would at least investigate it a little more.
Because here's the thing, you're not the first. You're not the first one and only. This wasn't a one and done. There was a reason certain people left the country.
Right. And like you said, this law been on the book for 50 years. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, it just saddens me that, I really wish our elected officials would come together and have a conversation about this, because it's about saving lives. Who goes to a hospital to later get maimed or worse, come out with an illness that kills you?
Right.
And there's no accountability.
Exactly. And I mean, accountability is needed. All right. If that's what it is going to make those that are in positions as doctors and so forth, or those that are in political power, whatever, to do right, then the accountability is needed.
Yes.
It's no other way to put that. I mean, they can make the excuses like the one I threw out to you earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You can run that all day, and you can run from whatever. I think that was some National Institute Health, whatever. I don't even remember the place. But the thing is, true is true. Yeah. All right. And the people out here, y'all really do need to stand behind this man, especially my people out of Harvey.
Yes. Harvey World.
Harvey World. I got to give Harvey some love,
Well, anybody who has to access our system, especially those who are not fortunate enough to have private insurance, I think, it is a critique on our public healthcare system that you had to go through such a tragedy, and that nobody wants to take accountability for that. We all know mistakes happen, but sometimes something as simple as an apology can go a long way. It's like, I wonder if the story would have been different and said, we apologize, we will try to do what we can to make amends. That can go a long way, but to sit there and deny and all of that stuff and, act like it never happened.
And still be allowed to practice.
Exactly.
Is a thing. We're coming to the top of the hour, so we are going to wrap up. Can you give us the name of the book and where it's found again and when the movie is coming out? And like we said.
And then I got one more question for you. Yeah. You know what it is, but do all just what Boss Man was talking about real quick.
Okay. The title of the book, once again, is Shattered But Not Broken by Jay Stiles. It's on Amazon.com. As far as the movie, like I said, we're still talking to a couple of different producers about a potential deal. So a time frame on that, I can't really give off the top. That's pretty much it.
All right. All you gossip lovers out there and those who like drama. I gotta ask this man this question. You all saw it, and he was there. The slap. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm going there.
He was in Hollywood at the time.
The slap.
This gonna be as close as we get to a Hollywood star for a minute. So you was in the back row. What was going on? What happened?
I wasn't in the venue that happened.
Okay.
But as far as the slap, oh man, it was a bad situation. I just really wish Will Smith would have had more restraint, because it was an epic moment for him that was actually darkened by what took place. The other part of it was one of the producers who won, Michael Dinnerstein and Robert Fivelet and Questlove. You know, I had a chance to meet them. They didn't get their due respect because of what happened with the Will Smith thing, but they still won their Oscar, and I want to give them the congratulations. But it was just a negative situation that impacted a positive event.
All right.
Truly understand.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for, as I said at the beginning, you know, a prophet is one who has experienced something and is willing to share that story to try to transform those others around him. Unfortunately, sometimes the prophet has to go through the journey himself, and that's what makes you the prophet, is you've been through this journey. So I want to thank you for taking the time to A, come to our show and, you know, take a moment with us, B, for telling your story, because it is a story that needs to be told. It needs to be shown, because if it happened to you, it can happen to me, it can happen to Rich.
It can happen to anybody.
It can happen to
out there.
anybody.
So you are definitely
And,
a blessing, man.
You know, you are a blessing. I hate the way that you became a blessing, but I'm grateful for the blessing that you have bestowed upon us. So thank you for that. Make sure you catch Shattered But Not Broken by Jay Styles on Amazon. As we close out, I do want to talk about something which I believe this brother's emblematic of, is grace and mercy. You know, we all fall short of the mark. Will Smith, you know, and none of us want to be judged by our worst day or anything like that. But it's on all of us to show each other a little grace and mercy. And you know, Will be okay, and you know, we can love the sinner but hate the sin. And I think that's what it needs to come out of this, is that, you know, it's not just a reflection on him, but it's a reflection on us. So many of us are willing to, you know, pile on, you know, you did bad. I think he knows he did bad. I think he knows that. Yeah. And I think, you know, it's up for him to find his own way and his own road back to redemption. None of us have fallen so far out of grace and mercy that we are not redeemable. And so I think that's more a reflection on us. What will we as a society allow him to do to redeem himself? And I hope that in the coming days, as we move forward, that we are able to show each other a little bit more grace and mercy. And that's my story for this week. And I'm so glad to be back.
My quick last words, as I always say, let's strive. Not striving just to be famous amongst men. That's cool, but let's strive to be famous amongst those of a higher plane. And to everybody out there, I like to say this as well: Ramadan Mubarak.
Very much so.
Without a doubt. And we will catch y'all next week. And thanks again, Mr. Julian Rucker.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much. I appreciate it.
This is Elevated Vibe.